Welcome to channel Qt Automation. In today's session we will see about Git stash and why stashing is important in Git. So first let's understand what is stashing. Imagine you are working on a feature and have uncommitted changes. But suddenly you need to switch to a different branch or start a bug fix. So now the question comes, what to do with uncommitted work? So I cannot remove all the uncommitted work, and also I don't want to commit that uncommitted work. So in that situation, instead of committing incomplete work or copying the files manually, we can use git stash. Git stash lets you save those changes temporarily, clearing your working directory. So imagine you are in a situation where you have some uncommitted work and you want to switch to some another branch. In that case, two things might happen. Either sometimes Git will allow you to switch, but most of the times Git will not allow you to switch and it will ask you to commit those changes or to stash those changes. So that's where we can use Git stash technique. So this is really helpful to keep your work organized and your commits meaningful. Stashing means we can save the uncommitted work in some temporary area. So let's take a simple example. If you are editing a file called abc.txt and you are adding some new functionality and you are writing the code for it, and halfway through you realize that you need to check something on another branch. So now what will you do with those incomplete work? So there is some incomplete work. Those changes or those code which you have added in that file, you don't want to commit those changes, but at the same time you don't want to remove those changes as well. Before switching to a next new branch or another branch, what we can do, rather than committing those incomplete changes, you can stash them. So we can stash those changes and then we can switch to another branch, do whatever you want on that another branch, and then again we can come back to your branch and you can again apply those stash changes into your file. So that is the main benefit of Git stash. It allows you to save or to store your changes temporarily without committing those changes. So Git stash lets you save those changes temporarily and it will help you to clear your working directory. So we will see one practical example of Git stash as well. So imagine this is your working directory. From working directory, you have started to code, you have committed some changes, again you have started to code, and there is some part or some line of code which you have written. After that, in between you want to switch to some another branch. Then what you can do is, instead of removing that code, or you can simply stash those changes. So we can save those uncommitted changes into one temporary area. So we can temporarily save those uncommitted changes. And then working directory will become clean again. So again you can add those files into staging area, or you can simply commit the changes which you want to commit. So this is called as a stashing. Stashing means it will allow you to save the changes in temporary area and your working directory will be clean. So let's see a practical simple example, then we will understand stash in a better way. So let's check one practical example. So what I will do, I will just open this project folder. So currently it is blank project folder. I have just started the git bash, and along with the git bash what I will do, I will create two files in this folder. So I'm just creating two files, let's say file1.txt, and I will also create file2.txt. So I have created two files. Now let's edit those files. So what I have done, I have created file1.txt And then I have also created file 2.txt. In file.txt, I will just add line like apple. In file 2.txt, let's add some content of orange. So let's add those content. So we can directly add those content as well by using git bash. By using vim editor, file1.txt, it will open the editor. Then we just have to press I for insert. I'm just adding apple, escape, colon WQ exclamation and enter. It will save the file. Similarly, I am opening file 2.txt. Let's edit file 2.txt as well. I for insert. In this, I am adding orange as a line. Escape, colon WQ exclamation. So we have saved those files. So in file1.txt, we have apple. In file2.txt, we have added orange. Now what I will do? Now I will commit. First I will add those changes into staging area, and then I will commit both the file changes. So how to add all the changes in staging area? Git add dot. It will add all the file1 and file2.txt changes into staging area. Why it is giving this error? Because we have not initialized any Git repository yet. So I'm just initializing the Git repository. Yeah, so now Git repo is initialized. Now we can add git add dot, means all the contents, all the files will be added to staging area. And then we can commit as well. Git commit -m adding file1 and file2 changes. This is the first commit. So I'm just adding file1 and file2 changes in first commit. So that is the comment I am adding for the commit. Good. Okay, so now we have committed those changes into local repository. Now we will see about the stash. So after committing those changes, now I will make some changes in file1.txt file. I am going to open this file. Let's open this file. So this file1.txt, which is having only content of apple so far, it is open now. Now what I will do, let's say just imagine I am just adding a code for my feature. So let's say I am adding some code here. Let's say I have added, instead of orange, let's say I am adding kiwi and mango. So kiwi and mango, the content I have added, I am saving this file, but still it is saved in working directory. If you see the git status now, it will show you there are some modified changes. So file1.txt is modified because we have added this line, and because of this line, git status is showing you this message that there are some modified changes in file1.txt. So those are the changes. So our working directory is not clean currently. There are some uncommitted changes which are present in our working directory. And now let's imagine a situation. Immediately I want to switch to some another branch, or let's say I want to check out to some another branch to do some changes, or let's say some bug fix. Then in that situation, what should I do with my uncommitted changes in this file? So I have uncommitted changes in this file1.txt. So I don't want to commit those changes. I don't want to commit these changes into local repo because it might possible that these are not completed work. It is work in progress. The kiwi and mango line which we have added, these changes I don't want to push in commit repository. I don't want to commit those in local repository. In this situation, we can use git stash. So what git stash will do? Once you execute the git stash command, the changes which are not committed will be stored in some temporary area. So it will be saved in some temporary area, and your working directory will become clean. So those changes will be removed for a temporary time from working directory, and it will be stored in stash changes area, and we can see the working directory will become clean now. So what I will do, let me just show you again. So this is the folder. and this is the file which is open. Kiwi and mango, this content we have added newly and it is uncommitted. Last committed version was having only apple. So now I want to stash these changes. So what I can do, I can simply execute one command, git stash. Once I execute this command, once I executed this command, if I again come to this file, you will see kiwi and mango got removed. Kiwi and mango, that content is now stored in stashed area. Those changes are stashed now. Those are temporarily saved in another area. And if you see the status now, git status, it will show you nothing to commit. So where are those changes now? So those are stashed. Those are not committed and those are also not removed. Those are still there. They are stored in some temporary area. So now I can switch to another branch. I can make another changes I want on that branch, whatever bug fix or let's say any code change. I can perform those changes freely on another branch, and then I can come back on my this branch where I have left my uncommitted changes which are stashed state now, and I want to resume my work. So at that point, I just want to resume my work now. So I have switched to again to my main branch where I was working. Let's say this is a feature branch and I was working on this branch. Now I want those changes which are stashed again back to my repository. I again want those changes back to my local repository. So how to get those changes back? I can use, that is called as applying the stash changes. So we can use two commands here. Either we can use git stash with pop or git stash apply. There is a small difference between git stash apply and git stash pop. So first we will see git stash pop. So, and even we can also see whatever changes are stashed by using git stash list command. If you execute git stash list, it will show you there is currently only one stash is present. So we have stashed that kiwi and mango changes. So those are displayed here. There can be multiple stash as well. So while you are working, you can perform a multiple stash. It will create the stash history. So currently there is only one area, one changes which are stashed currently. And I want those changes which are stashed again to be applied on my repository or working directory changes. I want those kiwi and mango again back to my working directory file changes. So what we can do, first I will use git stash pop. What this git stash pop command will do, whatever changes, if you see, whatever changes we have stashed, all those changes will again come back to working directory and it will be removed from the stashed changes. So whatever changes I have stashed, those will come back to working directory, and those after coming back to working directory, it will be removed from the stash list. It will get removed from stash list. So now let's execute git stash pop and let's see our kiwi and mango, those changes which we have stashed should come now. After using git stash pop, if I go to this file, kiwi and mango again came back. So those changes are came back from stashed area to our working directory file, that is file1.txt. Now if I see git stash list, I will not see any output. If you see, I am not seeing any output because when we use git stash pop command, the stash changes will come to working directory and those stash will be removed from the stash list. Those stash will be removed from the stash list. That is the benefit of using git stash pop. We can also use git stash apply as well. We can also use git stash apply. What is the difference? So git stash apply will also bring back the changes from stashed area to working directory files, but it will not remove the changes from stash area. So stash will also remain. So maybe whenever later stages we need, we can again refer to stash list. It will not remove from the stash list if you use git stash apply. So now what I will do, so we have popped the stash, right? So that's why it is removed from stash list and it is again back to the our working directory file. Now I will add some more changes. Let's say I am adding pineapple. I am saving this file, and this time I will again stash it. So git stash. So once I execute git stash command, and one more thing we have to understand is we can also give some name whatever we are stashing. So currently when I am stashing, I can, so if you only use git stash, it will not give you any ID or any specific identifier to that stash. If you see, when we executed git stash list previously, it is showing you stash @0. That is the index, that is the most recent stash. But if you want some identifier, so I want to make some identifier in that stash list. Whatever I am stashing right now, I want to give some identifier so that whenever I want to refer it, I should know which stash contain which changes. So I can use git stash push -m command, and I am adding work in progress. And what comment we have added? Let's say pineapple. Along with kiwi mango, we have also added pineapple now. And this I am stashing it. So when I execute this command, and when I again come back to this working directory file, those changes will be stashed now. Kiwi mango along with pineapple are stashed now. And now if you see git status, it will again show you some uncommitted changes. That means nothing to commit. There is no changes now because we have stashed those changes which were uncommitted. And currently it will show you the working directory is clean. Working tree is clean. And if I want to see git stash list, it will show you a single stash that we have just added. And it is showing you the identifier, the comment which we have added after git stash push -m and the whatever comment we have added. That is showing you here. And now I will use git stash apply. So previously we have seen when we used git stash pop, it basically what it did. So when we use git stash pop, it will bring the changes from stash region to our working directory file, but it will remove those from stashed list. But when we use git stash apply, it will also bring the changes into your working directory, but it will not remove the changes from stash list. So now in slash list, this stash is present. Now I will again use git stash apply. I will use git stash apply command. So when I execute the git stash apply, if I go to the file this time, again all changes are reverted back into my working directory. But this time, if you see git stash list, it will show you in stash list those changes are still present. Whatever we have stashed, those changes are present. Those are not removed. If you use git stash pop, this will be removed. So functionality is same, but in git stash pop, changes are removed from the stash list. In git stash apply, changes will remain on the stash list. So that is the difference between git stash pop and git stash apply. So what we have seen so far? So we have seen about git stash. By using git stash, your changes are saved in a temporary area and your working directory becomes clean. Then we have also seen applying a specific stash. We can also apply a specific stash as well. So I will just create some more stash, and then we will see how to apply a specific stash as well. So what we have done so far is, let me open these files. In git stash list, we have one stash which is present. Now I will remove that stash. We have applied those stash changes in our file already. After that, what I will do, I will remove the stash by using git drop command. If you want to remove the stash with specific index, then you can use git drop stash @ which index we want to drop. There is only one index currently, so 0, Yeah, so command is basically git drop git stash drop stash at the rate 0. So now it is showing you that specific stash is now dropped. It is deleted now by using git stash drop command, and then you have to provide the index stash at the rate 0. It will delete that stash. So now if I see git stash list, it will not show you any list because we have deleted the single stash which was present earlier. Now what we will do, in the same file, what I will do, I will first add those changes to now staging area, then I will commit those changes. So let's add those changes, git add and git commit as well. This is our second commit. So I have committed those changes now, so I don't have any uncommitted changes. If you say git status, it will show you there is nothing to commit. Our working tree is totally clean. So all the changes in file 1 and file 2 so far are committed now. Now what I will do, I will make some more changes in file1.txt as well as file2.txt, and then I will stash those changes for both the files. So two stash will be created, and after creating those two stash, if I want to specifically apply any stash, then how we can apply it. So what I will do now, let's say I am just adding some changes in file1.txt. I am just adding, let's say, lemon. I am adding one new line in file1.txt, that is lemon. I am saving it, and now if you see git status, but before that also make changes in file2.txt as well. So we have made changes in file1.txt, and let's open file2.txt, which is having only orange so far. In file2.txt I am adding, let's say, cherry. So we have made changes in file1.txt as well as file2.txt. So once you, and we haven't committed those changes yet, we have not committed those changes yet. So if I use git status, it will show you both the files are modified now. File1.txt and file2.txt, both the files are modified. So now what I will do, both the files are modified now, and I want to stash the changes. So what I will do, I will use git stash command. So once you execute git stash command, and after that I will again see git stash list. Currently it will show you only single stash, right? In this stash, whatever changes are done in this stash, we have changed file1.txt and file2.txt. After this, what I will do, if you see now those changes are stashed, I will add one more new file. What I will do, I will add one another file now. Let's add new file, touch file3.txt. After adding this file3.txt, I will make some changes. Let's say vim file3.txt. I am opening this file. Let's use I for insert, and I am adding, let's say, animal in this file. Escape colon wq exclamation mark. I have saved this file 3.txt. After saving this file 3.txt, I will add that specific file 3.txt in staging area, and then I will commit that. If you see, I have committed those changes of file 3.txt. So if you remember, we have created one stash with file1 and file2.txt changes. And now I will again modify. So currently if you see the git status, it is totally clean. Though we have made the changes in file1 and file2.txt, those changes are stashed currently. That was the first stash. If you see git stash list, it will show you that stash, which contains the changes which you have made in file1 and file2.txt. But now I will open file3.txt and make some changes in it. So let's say I am adding elephant. Now this change I am not going to commit. So this change I am not going to commit. So I will going to stash this change as well. I am not going to commit this. I am just going to stash it. So git stash command I am going to use push -m. This is for file 3 changes. So this stash contains file 3 changes. So now what we have done is, if you see git stash list, there will be 2 stash present. So if you understand, in first stash, so this is the first previous stash and this is the latest one. In latest stash, what is the changes we have done? We have changed the file 3. If you go now in file 3, if I click on this, elephant will be gone because that is stashed now. So it is on the previously committed version in which we have just committed animal. That is the latest stash list which is showing you, which is present at 0th index. And this was the previous one, previous stash which we have done. In that previous stash, what we have changed? We have changed file 1 and file 2. If you remember, in file 1 and file 2 also, we have added some changes. And then we have stashed all those changes. That's why our working directory became clean. Now, by using specific, if I want to now apply only the specific stash. Now, both these changes are stashed. This is containing stash changes from file 1 and file 2. This stash, this is the latest one which is containing stash from file 3. Now I want to apply only this stash one. I want to work on file 1 and file 2 again. For that I need all those changes which we have done in file 1 and file 2. So file 2.txt is having only orange, but we have added something here previously that I want back. Similarly, in file 1.txt also we have added something that I want back. So what I will do, I will use git stash apply stash at the rate. Which stash we want to apply? First index one. That was the file 2 and file 1 and file 2 stash changes. I'm just using 1. So it will bring back the changes which were stashed from file 1 and file 2. So let's execute. If you see now, if I go to the file 2, cherry is came back. And similarly, if I go to file 1.txt, the changes which we have done or stashed, those are again in the file 1 and file 2. So those changes are came back to file 1 and file 2.txt. And now this is how we can apply the specific stash if you want. So now we have added changes which were stashed from file 1 and file 2.txt. In file 3.txt, still it is not applied. So if I see the git stash list, we have used apply. That's why both the stash are present in stash list. Now again I want to apply the stash for file 3.txt. But this time I will use pop. So how to use it? Git stash pop stash at the rate. Which one you want to use now? 0. See now? Now if I open file 3.txt, it will also show you the changes which were stashed previously, that is the elephant one, is now came back into file 3.txt. So this is how we can apply git stash on specific stash. So if you want to apply the specific stash, we can do that as well. So we have seen how to apply a specific stash. So we had multiple stashes, and if you want to apply only a specific one, then we can add its identifier. For instance, if you want to apply stash at the rate 1, we can use the command git stash apply stash at the rate 1, that is the index. In curly brackets, we have to put the index. And this is helpful when you have several stashes and you want to retrieve a specific set of changes without applying the most recent one. This way, we can have control over which save state you are restoring. We have also seen how to view the stash changes. So what is the command for that? Git stash list. So once you execute git stash list command, it will show you list of all the stashes which we have stored. The most recent one is stash at the rate 0. The most recent one is stash at the rate 0. So that is about viewing the stash changes. Then we have also seen how to create a named stash. So you can also give stashes a descriptive names to keep track of the changes more easily. For example, instead of just giving git stash, we should try adding a message like this: git stash push -m and whatever comment or identifier which you want to add. That also we have seen in our example. Using -m lets you add a message which makes it easier to recognize what each stash contains when you run git stash list. We have also seen the difference between git stash pop and git stash apply. So what is the difference between these two? Git stash pop applies the stash changes to your working directory. Git stash also applies the stash changes to your working directory. Main difference is git stash pop will automatically remove the stash from the stash list after applying it, whereas stash apply will remain in the stash list so it can be reused later. We can use git stash pop when you don't need or no longer need the stash after applying it. But if you need those for later purpose, we can simply use git stash apply. It will help you to keep the stash for future reference or reuse. And the last one, we have also seen how to delete a stash. So if you no longer need a stash, you can delete it. If you want to delete a specific stash, we can use command like this: git stash drop stash at the rate index in curly bracket. And also, if you want to clear all the stashes, if you want to delete all the stash, then we can use git stash clear command. So if you use git stash clear command, for example, in our case, if you see now, git stash list, currently there is single stash. I will use git stash clear command. It will remove all the stashes. So now if I again check git stash list, it will not show you any output because all the stash are deleted now. So this is how we can use deleting a stash. But while applying pop and stash, so whenever you are applying or popping the stash, sometimes the result can comes into conflict. If the changes being applied conflict your current working directory changes, in such cases Git will notify you about the conflict. So we have to resolve those conflict manually before proceeding. So to conclude, Git stash is a powerful tool that helps you manage the uncommitted changes when you need to switch tasks. Whether you need to stash changes temporarily or keep the track of multiple stashes or apply changes selectively. So this is about Git stash. I hope you understood the concept of Git stash. We have also seen the example as well. On high level, just understand Git stash is used in a situation where you have some uncommitted changes and you suddenly have to switch to some another branch. Then instead of removing those changes or even instead of committing those changes, you can still store those changes in temporary area. Then you can switch to different branch and do your work, and then you can come back to the your feature branch where you have left those stash changes, and we can again apply those stash changes into your working directory changes, and you can continue working on it. So that is the main benefit of using Git stash. So thank you for watching this video. In coming session we will see